You're not worth the investment, Claire. My father said it at the dinner table. Thanksgiving. I was 17. He didn't even look up from his plate. My name is Claire Aldridge. I'm 32 years old. I'm a spinal neurosurgeon at Street, Luke's Regional Medical Center in Knoxville, Tennessee. I operate on the part of the body that holds everything else upright. And the man who told me I wasn't worth investing in is currently lying on a gurney in my pre-op bay, waiting for me to decide whether I'm going to save his ability to walk. But I need to take you back, because this story didn't start in an operating room. It started at a kitchen table in Ridgewood, Connecticut, with a 17-year-old girl who still believed her father loved her equally. If stories like mine matter to you, that subscribe button means more than you know. Let me take you back to where it started. Gerald Aldridge was a financial planner. Successful. Corner office in Stamford. Brooks Brothers suits, Rolex Submariner, a Mercedes in the driveway of a 5-bedroom colonial. My mother, Donna, kept the house perfect. Fresh flowers on the island every Monday. Williams-Sonoma cookware she used exactly twice. My brother Bradley was 2 years older. Athletic, charming, always working some angle. Dad called him the future. Called him my boy. Called him by his name. He called me the other one. Not always. Sometimes it was Claire. But at family gatherings, at the country club, at his firm's holiday party, I was the other one. Bradley would get introduced by name, by accomplishment, by future. This is Bradley. He's going to change the world. I'd get a hand wave. And this is the other one. I was a straight-A student. National Honor Society. Varsity swim team. First chair clarinet. None of it registered. When I brought home a perfect score on the PSATs, my father glanced at the paper and said, "That's nice." Bradley's starting a business plan for his entrepreneurship class. Bradley's business plan got a C-. Christmas, 2001. I was 15. Under the tree, Bradley got a new laptop, a leather briefcase for your future office, and a $500 gift card to his favorite clothing store. I got a sweater from Kohl's and a Barnes & Noble gift card for $25. The college fund conversation happened 2 years later. 17. Thanksgiving. Turkey was still being carved. My grandmother Ruth was there, my mother's mother, 81, sharp as a scalpel and twice as direct. "Dad," I said, trying to sound casual, I wanted to talk about college applications. "I'm looking at pre-med programs. Johns Hopkins, Duke, maybe Vanderbilt. My counselor says my scores are competitive." My father set down the carving knife, looked at Bradley, then at me. "Claire, I've been meaning to discuss this with you." He wiped his hands on a napkin. "Bradley has an opportunity. A real one. He's developing a tech startup, an app for small business accounting. His partner has seed investors lined up, but they need matching capital." "What does that have to do with my college fund?" I asked. "I've redirected your education savings to support Bradley's venture. It's a better investment." The table went silent. My grandmother's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. "All of it?" I asked. $180,000, yes. It's the right move, Claire. Bradley's company could be worth millions. Your education, well, you can take out loans like everybody else. Gerald? My mother's voice was thin. Careful. We discussed this. You said you'd talk to her privately. She's old enough to understand business. He looked at me like he was explaining something simple to someone slow. You're not worth the investment, Claire. Not the way Bradley is. He's building something. You want to go sit in classrooms for 8 more years. Med school, I said. I want to go to medical school. Exactly. 8 years of school, then residency, then more training. By the time you're making money, Bradley will have already sold his first company. My grandmother set down her fork. Gerald, That money was earmarked for Claire's education. Half of it came from my contributions. With all due respect, Ruth, I manage the family finances. I've made the decision. You've made a mistake, my grandmother said. It's done. He picked up the carving knife again. Started slicing turkey like nothing had happened. I sat there, 17 years old, mashed potatoes going cold on my plate. My brother across from me, studying his phone, not even pretending to be uncomfortable. My mother gripping her water glass so hard her knuckles were white. That was the night I stopped waiting for my father to see me. I graduated high school 4 months later, valedictorian. My father attended the ceremony. He clapped for Bradley's name during the senior awards. Bradley won most likely to succeed and checked his phone during my speech. I got into Vanderbilt on a partial scholarship. The rest I covered with loans, work study, and a job at a coffee shop 6 blocks from campus. I lived in the cheapest housing I could find, a converted storage room above a laundromat, $340 a month. The radiator clanked all night. The hot water lasted 11 minutes. My grandmother Ruth sent checks when she could. $50, $75 on a fixed income. Every memo line for the girl who's worth every penny. I kept going. Bradley's startup launched in January of my freshman year. Dad threw him a party at the country club. 80 people. Open bar. A banner that read, Aldridge Innovations, the future starts now. The startup folded 14 months later. The app never worked properly. The partner disappeared with a chunk of the seed money. Bradley burned through $180,000 of my college fund, plus another $90,000 from investors, and produced exactly nothing. No product. No revenue. No future. I found out from my mother. Neither Gerald nor Bradley ever mentioned it. No apology. No acknowledgement. $180,000 gone, and they treated it like weather. I doubled my shifts at the coffee shop. Started tutoring organic chemistry on the side. Applied for every grant and scholarship I could find. My GPA was 3.94. I got a research position in a neuroscience lab. I published my first paper at 20. Bradley, meanwhile, moved back home. Lived in his old bedroom. Dad got him a job at his firm junior analyst, corner desk, no real responsibilities. Within a year, Bradley was telling people at parties that his startup was ahead of its time and the market wasn't ready. Nobody asked him to explain the $270,000. I took the MCAT in the spring of my junior year, scored in the 99th percentile, applied to 12 medical schools, got into 9. I called my father to tell him. First time I'd called him in 8 months. That's nice, he said. Bradley just got promoted. Bradley got promoted to a desk with a window. I got into medical school at the University of Virginia. 4 more years of loans, 4 more years of coffee shop hours and ramen dinners, and $47 in my checking account the week before financial aid hit. But I was in. I was doing it. What would you do if the person who stole your future acted like it never happened? Would you keep going? Or would you confront them? Tell me in the comments. Med school was the hardest thing I've ever done. Anatomy lab at 6A. 12-hour study days. Cadavers and coffee and crying in the parking lot at midnight because I was so tired I couldn't remember my own phone number. My roommate asked me once why I was smiling during a spinal anatomy exam. I told her it was the first time in my life someone was grading me on something my father couldn't take credit for. She thought I was joking. I wasn't, but I loved it. Every layer of muscle, every nerve pathway, every impossible puzzle of the human body. I loved it the way my father loved money completely, obsessively, without apology. 3rd year, I chose my specialty, orthopedic spine surgery. The most competitive, most demanding subspecialty in the field. 5 years of residency after med school. Then a fellowship. Then more training. My attending, doctor. Patricia Harmon asked me why spine. Because it's the hardest thing I can do, I said. And because everyone told me I wasn't worth the investment. She looked at me for a long time. Good. Use that. I did. Residency was 5 years of 8 0-hour weeks. I saw my mother at Christmas. Sometimes. My grandmother Ruth died during my 3rd year, 91. Her will left me $14,000 every penny she had. The memo, for the investment that paid off. I hung it on my wall, never cashed it. I finished residency, then fellowship. Then I was offered a position at Street. Luke's Regional Medical Center in Knoxville, one of the top spine surgery programs in the Southeast. I was 31, board certified. One of fewer than 200 surgeons in the country qualified for complex lumbar fusion procedures. My starting salary was more than my father had earned in his best year. I didn't tell him. My mother did. He said nothing. My mother filed for divorce 8 months later. 29 years of marriage. Gerald didn't contest it. His firm had downsized. He'd lost clients. Bradley was still at the company, still underperforming, still living at home. Do you think Gerald ever realized what he threw away? Because what happened next is bigger than you think. 23 years after that Thanksgiving dinner. 23 years after he carved the turkey and carved me out of the family investment. My phone buzzed at 2:47 a.m. on a Wednesday. I was the on-call attending. The screen read, trauma, page, incoming L4, L5, burst fracture, motor deficit progressing. I was at the hospital in 12 minutes. Scrubs on, scans pulled up, pre-op team assembling. The case was complex. L4, L5 spinal fusion with decompression. The patient had fallen from a ladder, a man in his late 60s, previously healthy. The fracture was compressing the spinal cord. Without surgery, he'd lose the ability to walk. Permanently. I reviewed the imaging, mapped the approach, checked the patient roster for the name, Gerald Aldridge. Age 67. Emergency contact, Bradley Aldridge. I read the name 3 times. Then I sat down in the dictation room and put my head in my hands. The charge nurse, Deborah, found me there. Doctor, Aldridge? The patient's family is asking for you. I know who the patient is, Deb. She paused. She'd worked with me for 2 years. She knew my last name. She knew I never talked about my father. Do you need me to call Doctor? Henderson? He's secondary on-call. Doctor, Henderson isn't qualified for this procedure. He's general ortho, not spine. What about a transfer? Nearest level 1 trauma center with a spine specialist is 4 hours away. In that time, the compression will cause irreversible damage. He'll never walk again. So it has to be you. It has to be me. I stood up, washed my hands, looked at myself in the scrub room mirror, this woman in blue scrubs with tired eyes and steady hands, who'd put herself through every rung of every ladder her father had tried to pull out from under her. It has to be me, I said again, and walked into pre-op. Bradley was in the waiting area. He looked exactly the same charming smile, same expensive watch, same air of someone who never quite earned anything he wore. He was 40 now, still at Dad's old firm, though it had been acquired twice. Claire, he said, like we'd seen each other last week. Like 23 years of silence was a minor scheduling conflict. I'm your father's surgeon. I know, they told me. He ran his hand through his hair. Is he going to be okay? That depends on the surgery. And you're the one doing it. I'm the only one who can. He stared at me. Something moved behind his eyes. Not guilt, exactly. Recognition. The slow understanding that the girl who wasn't worth the investment was now the only person on earth who could keep his father from a wheelchair. Claire, I know we haven't. Dad and I never really. Bradley? I need to prep for surgery. We can talk after. Right. Of course. He sat back down, picked up his phone. Old habits. I walked into the pre-op bay, and there he was, Gerald Aldridge. Smaller than I remembered. The Rolex was gone, probably sold. His hair had thinned. He looked like what he was, a 67-year-old man who'd spent 30 years being important and was now horizontal, in a hospital gown, in a town where nobody knew his name. Except me. His eyes were open, alert. The morphine had taken the edge off, but he was present. He looked up when I walked in, and I watched it happen in real time, the flicker of confusion, then recognition, then something I'd never seen on Gerald Aldridge's face before. Fear. Claire? Hello, Dad. Why are you here? I'm your surgeon. I'm the attending spinal neurosurgeon. You're a doctor? 23 years. He didn't know I was a doctor. I'm a surgeon, Dad. I've been a surgeon for 6 years. He blinked, looked at the ceiling, looked back at me. Your mother mentioned something. I didn't. I thought she was exaggerating. She wasn't. Silence. The monitors beeped. Steady. Calm. The machines didn't care about history. Am I going to walk again? He asked. If the surgery goes well, yes. If it doesn't, or if we wait too long, no. And you're the one doing it. I'm the only one within 200 miles qualified for this procedure. Your insurance won't cover an air transfer. And every hour we wait, the compression worsens. He lay there. My father. The man who took $180,000 from my future and handed it to a boy who burned it in 14 months. The man who called me the other one. The man who said I wasn't worth investing in. Now his ability to walk depended on the investment I'd made in myself. I'm scared, he said. You should be. This is a complex procedure. Claire, I need to tell you. You don't need to tell me anything. I've had 23 years to hear everything you had to say. I checked his IV line. Now let me do my job. The surgery took 7 hours. 7 hours of titanium rods and pedicle screws and fluoroscopic imaging and the most delicate, demanding work a human being can do with their hands. 7 hours of holding a man's ability to walk between my fingers, a man who once told me I wasn't worth a dime. I didn't think about Thanksgiving. I didn't think about $180,000. I didn't think about 14 months of a failed startup or the laundromat apartment or the $47 checking account balance. I thought about the spine, the nerves, the screws, the angles, the millimeters that separated walking from wheelchair. That's what surgeons do. We put the person away and bring the precision forward. At hour 4, my resident doctor, Cooper said, "Beautiful reduction, doctor." Aldridge. At hour 6, the compression was fully decompressed. The rods were seated. The fusion was holding. At 10:23 a.m., I closed. Clean. Complete. Textbook. In the recovery waiting area, I gave the update. Bradley wasn't alone. His wife Jennifer was there, and 2 people I recognized from Gerald's old firm, Dan Moretti, a senior partner, and someone younger I didn't know. They'd driven down when they heard. Surgery was successful. The fusion is stable. He'll need extensive physical therapy, but he should regain full mobility. Bradley exhaled. Thank you, Claire. I'm his doctor. This is what I do. Dan Moretti stepped forward. Your father talks about Bradley all the time, but I don't think he's ever mentioned. Daddy has a daughter who's a spinal surgeon. I said. No, he wouldn't have. The room shifted. Jennifer looked at Bradley. Bradley looked at the floor. Since we're all here, I said, let me clarify something about the patient in room 4. I used clinical distance. It was easier. In November 2003, Gerald Aldridge redirected $180,000 from my college education fund to capitalize Bradley's tech startup. Half of that money was contributed by our grandmother. Dan's hand went to his tie. He'd managed money alongside Gerald for 20 years. The startup operated for 14 months. 0 revenue. 0 product. The partner disappeared with a portion of the seed capital. The remaining $180,000, my education was gone entirely. Claire, Bradley started. I'm not finished. I financed my entire pre-med, medical school, residency, and fellowship through federal loans, work study, and double shifts at a coffee shop. I lived in a converted storage room above a laundromat for $340 a month. I had $47 in my checking account the week before financial aid hit. The charge nurse, Deborah, had stopped charting. A resident near the hallway turned around. Tonight, at 2:47 a.m., I received a trauma page for an L4-L5 burst fracture with progressive motor deficit. I am the only spine surgeon within 200 miles qualified for that procedure. Gerald Aldridge, the man who told me at Thanksgiving dinner that I was not worth the investment needed, the one surgeon his insurance could reach, nobody moved. 7 hours. Titanium rods. Pedicle screws. I saved his ability to walk, not because he invested in me, because I invested in myself. Dan Moretti sat down slowly. He looked like a man recalculating 20 years of assumptions. Jennifer whispered something to Bradley. He didn't respond. I'm not asking for an apology, I said. I'm making sure the record is straight. Because for 23 years, nobody in this family or outside it asked what happened to Claire Aldridge's future. Bradley was pale. The golden child. The $180,000 man. Sitting in a plastic hospital chair while the sister he forgot about stood over him in surgical scrubs, still wearing the evidence of a 7-hour surgery on her shoes. Now you know, I said. And so does everyone in this room. Gerald woke up the next morning, wiggled his toes, cried. I checked on him twice a day for 5 days. Professional, thorough, recovery protocol, physical therapy schedule, medication regimen. I was his surgeon. I was excellent at it. On the 4th day, he tried to explain himself. Something about not seeing me, about Bradley reminding him of himself. I let him talk for 30 seconds. That was generous. I don't need your explanation, I said. I need you to follow your PT regimen so I can discharge you on schedule. He was discharged on day 6. Bradley drove him home. Dan Moretti did not visit once. I signed the papers. Standard procedure. My mother called that evening. I heard what happened in the waiting room, she said. All of it. Good. I'm proud of you, Claire. Thanks, Mom. Here's what happened after. Dan Moretti called Gerald's old clients. I don't know exactly what he said, but I know what he learned in that waiting room, and I know how small towns work. Within 3 months, Gerald couldn't get a lunch meeting in Stamford. Gerald sold the house in Ridgewood. Couldn't afford it. 2-bedroom in a senior community. No corner office. No Rolex. No Mercedes. No reputation. Bradley left the firm. Couldn't look at the partners who'd heard everything. I don't keep in touch. Gerald called once, 2 months after discharge. I let it ring. He didn't call again. I don't owe him a door. I don't owe him a window. I saved his spine because that's what spinal surgeons do. The relationship ended at that Thanksgiving table. The surgery didn't reopen it. Grandma Ruth's check is still on my wall. Uncashed. for the investment that paid off. She was right. Last week, I scrubbed in for a 12-hour spinal reconstruction. 17 screws, 3 rods, a 19-year-old kid who fell off a roof. I held his future in my hands for half a day and gave it back to him intact. His mother was in the waiting room when I came out. She grabbed my hand with both of hers and said, "You saved my son." I said, "That's my job. So that's my story." The father who took my college fund. The brother who burned it. The 23 years in between. The operating room where it all came full circle, not because the universe owed me anything, but because I built something nobody could take away. Gerald Aldridge spent $180,000 betting on the wrong child. That bet lasted 14 months. The child he wrote off? She's still operating, still saving spines, still worth every penny he refused to spend. Sit with that a while. I'll be here on the porch. Come back when you're ready.